Well, welcome to another episode of Security IQ. Stop laughing, man.
You're not taking anything off.
I'm not taking anything off. Sorry.
Not that kind of show.
Yet.
So today we have Antoinette King with us. The infamous, one of a kind Antoinette King. Probably the entire audience already knows her. We are super excited to have her on. She has been keeping us laughing and very intrigued with some of her activity on LinkedIn. She's been publishing some articles, but I'll let her sort of go into what she's been up to over the last few months, and then we'll start digging in with the interesting questions. So Antoinette, go ahead, give us a little background on you.
Infamous, my gosh, that was like a lead in. I don't even know how to answer all that stuff, but thank you, I appreciate it. And I'm humbled by the support that our industry has really given me over the last few months. Everybody knows I'm kind of obsessed a bit with cybersecurity and our industry and how we're gonna kind of bring the security industry into the next generation of security, right? And kind of tying in the physical security and the cyber stuff. Yeah, I am working on a couple of articles that are coming out soon, so I'm super excited. September and October are going to be big months for me. So I, again, appreciate all of the support from the industry publications. I've been working a lot with SIA and ASIS and in the various different committees, and also with InfraGard. So that's a new one. A lot of people in the physical security industry aren't familiar with InfraGard, but
I know InfraGard.
Yeah, so
do I.
Honestly, like that's my big project I'm working on right now, actually with Andrew Lanning, and I'm super excited and proud of it because this really is bringing physical security into the cyber world, you know. And InfraGard, if you don't know, is a joint coalition between the FBI and commercial industry, kind of focused around critical infrastructure. So, by the way, I talk with my hands. I've knocked shit off my desk. Oh, sorry. Are we allowed to?
That's all right.
It's all good.
We slip once in a while. You're fine. You're in the right forum. Don't worry about it.
So the one thing everybody makes fun of me whenever I do any kind of anything is my hands are all over the place. So just,
Okay.
I flail. I'm sorry.
I'm Italian. You're Italian. A lot of our
Pull my
audience
hands
members
down
are
and
Italian.
I can't speak. Like literally
all
pull my
good.
hands down. I can't talk.
So what
So
happens if
I'm
we tie
watching
your hands
myself, I'm
down?
going, "Oh,
Do you shake your head?
No, I try not to get bobblehead when people talk. That drives me insane.
Okay.
When I'm on a Zoom call and you have that one bobblehead where they're just like this the whole time and I just want to choke the person. But no, I try not to be
So
a bobblehead.
folks who are on Zoom calls with Tony, don't ever do
Yeah,
that.
if you're on a Zoom call with me, don't do bobblehead. Because then I'm distracted and can't listen to anything the person's saying without it. So anyway, yeah, for me, like where I find my most joy is in all these different organizations that I'm working with, because there's so many incredibly smart people and there's so much great stuff that we're doing. So that's kind of where I'm at this point.
That's awesome.
Very cool.
So here's a question for you. What made you want to go into cyber? I mean, known you on the physical side, but then you're suddenly, and that's where we met, mostly because of the cyber.
Yeah. So way back when I started in physical security, I had a mentor. He was the chairperson for my criminal justice program at SUNY Farmingdale. And this is going way back. This is like late 90s.
I didn't know you were a Farmingdale girl.
Yeah. So I actually have 2 degrees from Farmingdale. So he said to me after I graduated with the Managing Security Systems program, he said, go get your Microsoft certification. So back then, everything was analog. Like nothing in the security and physical security industry was online. But he had the awareness and the foresight to know that the industries were going to converge at some point. So I went and I got my MCSE back when Windows NT was the OS of choice. That's how old I am. But I don't even put that on my resume because it's so outdated, but whatever. But I got a computer background, right? And so fast forward 20 years, and here we are in this IoT kind of environment. And I'm recognizing that we're, as an industry, putting devices on people's networks without any security, network security. And I recognize there's a major gap in knowledge and understanding of that. So that's why I started pursuing it, because I didn't know enough about it, right? Like I had been so disconnected from IT that I was like, I need to start learning more, understanding more, understand the threat landscape, and then how we can work as an industry with the IT folks. Because everybody knows, you go on a walkthrough, you're doing security stuff, the IT people are never invited. And then when they finally find out that you just put crap on their network, they do everything and anything they can to stop you from doing what you're going to do. So I encourage people to get them on board, get their buy-in in the beginning. That's kind of why I got into cyber. I realized that there's a us against them mentality. We have to all work together because we have to be able to provide physical security without being that vulnerability on the network and being the ones that kind of open the door for the rest of the company to get
very well said. No, that's very, very, very well said. So with that though, any challenges that you found going stepping into this whole new technological endeavor, because we evolve so quickly, especially on this side of it, and I always feel like physical is not one step behind, but always trying to get these guys to buy in, because it's still that whole mentality that you talked about, me against them or them against us. And with this whole convergence, and that's something we talked about in the past, how like, what are you thinking about that? Like the whole physical cyber convergence, in terms of, do you feel like we're there yet? How far are we in terms of getting the acceptance that physical and cyber will eventually converge?
Yeah, so I definitely think there's challenges. We have so much resistance right now, from both the integrator side and then also from the manufacturing side. I think that there's a lot of mystification around cyber. People are scared of it. They don't understand it. So trying to get people to realize that it's not this big, scary thing, and that a lot of the concepts of physical security, that defense in depth and layers of security, it's the same exact concepts in cyber. But the real main challenge is from the manufacturing side, developing devices that are secure by design, right? So that's the first thing that manufacturers have to understand, whether they're cameras or access control devices or perimeter protection devices. And then from the integrator side is understanding that you have to abide by policies that companies put in place. You have to ask the questions. Do you have a password policy? What are, do you use certificates? All these kind of things. But because a lot of the security integrators don't necessarily have that knowledge base, they don't ask the questions and they kind of just assume that somebody else is going to take care of it.
Right.
I think from my perspective, my goal and what I would love to be able to help security integrators do is to learn what these things are, educate their technicians as to how we can have those conversations, and then be able to drive the conversation away from what's the cheapest product that I can install to how does this product fit into a holistic security solution, right? And that will provide security integrators the ability to set themselves aside from the, excuse the expression, but the trunk slammers out there, right? Like the people that are out there just to turn a buck, drop a camera in and leave. You want to develop those long-standing relationships. You need to figure out how you're going to set yourself aside. Min, you're in IT. The IT integrators, the IT industry, their focus is not on price. Cisco switches are not the cheapest switches, right?
Oh, no,
right?
not.
But everybody wants them. Why? Because there's an understanding around their brand. And so that's what I feel like if we as an industry can realize we have value and we're part of that ecosystem, we can kind of decommoditize products and really just bring our industry to the next level. But people have to be willing to learn.
Well, I know it's Elisa, you yourself is always, talking and touting education and awareness, right? And I know Elisa's a big proponent of that. Yeah, what's your take on this and how we educate the old timers to actually conform? Because I know we had some conversations about that.
Leave it up to Min to just throw that gauntlet down.
Oh, I have no shame. You know that. I'm like, I'll throw it out there.
Min is far less PC than the average bear.
Well, okay, I'm sorry. The newbie, well, not the newbies. It is the old timers if we think about it.
You're right.
The older generation.
And antiquated thinkers.
Thank you. That's a politically correct way. Sorry to the old timers. You're antiquated thinkers.
Well, and the truth is, not all of them are.
No.
They're not exactly interchangeable descriptions. But because there's a lot of folks out there, from my perspective, I think that you can have some newbies that don't really understand the ecosystem,
Right.
as Antoinette just explained, and they are sort of getting by with what needs to be done. So from the integrator all the way down, throughout the entire process, you have technicians, you have project managers, you have the sales folks, and what they're doing is exactly what's in front of them on their desk. They don't want to think beyond, well, what else is needed? Is this the right product? Is this the right solution? Unless it is going to benefit them in some way. So if they have a vested interest to present a better offering because it's going to put money in their pocket, maybe they will. But even then, sometimes they just want to get in and out. You talk about the trunk slammer wanting to pop up a camera, but quite honestly, even some of the larger integrators, because of the overhead that they automatically have built into every single project that they can't get away from, even they often say, you know what, let's just get it done. Who cares what specs? Who cares if it's the right thing? They don't have the conversation until there is a mismatch on the integration side. Well, we can't complete this project because software A does not talk to software B, and now we have to reconfigure and find a new solution. That's typically how it goes. And, the manufacturers, and I'm not, trying to be biased here, but the manufacturers, some of them, not all of them, will come in and say, you know what, our product is better because. Some of them will say, well, our product is cheaper, but nobody really wants to ever sell on price unless they absolutely have to. The cheaper options, that is all they have. That's the only tool they have, is to sell on price. But if you're a good manufacturer and you care about the product that you're producing, you want to sell on the value. So they may come in and say, hey guys, you should look at our product because it is the safer product from a cybersecurity standpoint, or it performs better, or this or that. But often it falls on deaf ears because either the security consultant is too wrapped up with the project he's in to say, all right, let me think about this a little differently. Let me not spec the same product over and over, like some of the ones we know.
We won't name names.
That cut and paste specification.
Right. Let's not just take the easy route. Let me take a minute to really evaluate, is there a better, safer, more secure product out there? Most people do not do that. And I understand why. I think we're all a little...
I'm sorry,
well,
I still don't.
I'll tell you why. Because there's an overload from the sales aspect of things, whether you're on the manufacturing side or you're an integrator or whatever. You have to, do volume. You have to go after as many opportunities as you can. And it all does sort of blend in together. It should be the consultant's responsibility or the end user's responsibility to do their homework and look for the best product and understand, but they don't often do that. And so it gets pushed down through the process, the manufacturers, the integrators, even the consultants sometimes who don't care, to make the determination on what is the best solution. And that's where it all falls apart.
See, I agree with you, but I also came from an end user side. And for me, I held a tight ship and a tight rein when I was putting standards together, especially on the spec side, specifically for the reasons you talked about, the cookie cutter situation, because you're so accustomed to actually doing cookie cutter that it's so antiquated. My issue is in that, it could be a template that's an evolving document, a living document that has to be continuously reviewed and changed. As long as you change it and update it, whether you're a consultant or an end user, as long as you're up to date with it, it's fine, because the specs are now updated to current standards and regulatory requirements, right? If it's a NIST standard, whatever, it's built into that. But as long as it's evolving living document, which a lot of people fail to do, what they do is they leave it antiquated. It's 10 years old. You should see how many specs I've read that are 10 to 15 years old. And I'm looking at that and I'm literally saying to myself, explain to me why you're using an antiquated, you know, a system that doesn't do any load balancing, that makes absolutely no sense with the amount of IoT devices that's out there. But this can be a living document that's evolving, and it can still be cookie cutter, a standard template that's going as long as it's evolving. No one goes back to look at it. That's the problem. To me, that's not being updated. To me, that's being lazy. That should be
agreed.
Let's take it to the next level, right? So now we're talking about just specs. We're talking about designing systems. Right. But nobody talks in the beginning, right? When we're installing our products and we're going to hand the keys over, nobody's talking about lifecycle management.
Oh, agreed.
This is really the
validation.
Right?
Yes.
It doesn't even matter in the beginning, you know, like we put our product in and, you know, we're going to set up an account policy and yeah, we're going to make sure that it's got signed firmware and we're going to make sure that it's got secure boot, TPM modules, all these great things. Yep. Okay, we put it in. It's not a Ron Popeil, set it and forget it. And this is where the channel, right? This is where the channel can really start to, and I don't mean to say this in a crude way, but monetize on cyber, right? Like, let's set up a lifecycle management program with our end customers. This is where, to your point, Elisa, you know, you go in and we just got to get these projects. Well, if we can figure out a way to evolve into this recurring revenue service contract that's going to establish this long-lasting relationship, maybe then we don't have to pump and dump every 5 freaking days.
So you're bringing up a really good point, and here is the disconnect on that leg of the trip. When you're looking at an integrator that does sell some sort of maintenance plan, they lean on that reoccurring revenue to make profit, which is sad and it's wrong. And I know this firsthand. I've worked in some situations where I could see that's exactly what they were doing. We're going to charge you this annual fee, and yeah, maybe we'll pay the maintenance on the product, or maybe we'll just pocket it. And that's wrong. You are, number one, that's fraud because you're deceiving your customer. Right. But you're also, what happens to those annual maintenance programs? If your organization is robust enough to have a true maintenance department that keeps up to date with all of the firmware releases and everything that goes along with keeping that system a well-oiled machine, great. I have yet to see someone who does it really, really well.
And I'm gonna.
But hold on, there's more.
I know, and I'm gonna add on to that after you're done.
But 90%, and that's a totally made up number. Please don't quote me on it. Most integrators will take that money and pocket it, and occasionally, you know, pay the maintenance fees to the manufacturers just to keep the system up to date. Sometimes it lapses. Oh yeah, we got to make a phone call because something's not working. Okay, let me pay that maintenance fee now. All that money gets pocketed. And then who suffers? The end user. I'm not saying this happens in every single scenario. I'm not saying that every integrator out there is guilty of this, but a lot of them are. A lot of them do not properly maintain those contracts. And then, you know, then we get behind the 8 ball when something falls apart, when your systems need upgrading and they're not communicating to each other. Nobody's really staying on top of that, so the end user suffers. There's one more point I was going to make on this, and I just went right out of my head. Go ahead, Min.
That's okay. So to your point, and this is just as an end user from many eons ago, you're 100% right, because I will say this, I'm not going to name the manufacturer, but I got into a big battle with a manufacturer because we had a maintenance contract with them. And lo and behold, as I reviewed the maintenance contract, I literally called the VP, actually the president and the senior VP at that point. I basically said, interesting, you're charging us X amount of money here. It was like a close to a 6-figure number.
Wow.
Where's all the stuff that you promised on this document and the SLA that you promised us? I don't see any RMS. I don't see any updates. I don't see you guys doing any remote. Just check on my system here. What the hell's going on and why am I paying you this? And that pissed me off royally. And I literally went after them and I basically gave them a earful and said, you lied to me for 3 years. You made us pay this maintenance fee, but you provided no service whatsoever to the end user. And this is a big problem. You're right. It's literally fraud. And I called them out on it. And you should see the backpedaling that they were giving me. It was disgusting. And I hate to say this, manufacturers, if you're going to sell this type of service, you better step up. Don't
But it's
lie.
not, it's not always the manufacturer, because it, you know, if the manufacturer is providing some sort of white glove service to remote into your system and maintain it, and I know a few that do, and they actually come through, and they have they have a dedicated support person that is assigned to, and you will pay for the service. It is not cheap, but they will provide you with your own 800 number, a dedicated support person to have regular scheduled health check calls with you, and all of that. There's very few of them that do that, but the ones that do, and the ones that do it well, they get paid. And I know so many end users that have said to me personally, you know what, I'm going to pay for this, I expect that kind of service, and they are willing to pay a higher price.
Exactly.
But they usually get backed into, because they don't have the budget for the annual support that's needed for that level of service, they usually get backed into, well, we're just going to pay for the maintenance to upgrade, to have regular scheduled upgrades. And that's where it falls through the cracks, because then the onus either goes on to the end user to keep track of those regular updates, firmware updates, you know, version updates, and to maintain or to manage all of the other integrated parts and components to their system to make sure that if they do that upgrade, it's not going to knock something else off, right? So if that onus either falls back onto the end user or to the integrator. And again, the integrator will take the money. Do they actually support and maintain that system? A lot of them do not do it very well. A lot of them.
And I think that's the important piece here, right? Is that back in the analog days, we grew up with this philosophy: if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? Nobody upgraded anything unless it wasn't working, because traditionally, if you tried to upgrade it, it would break something else. And that was really our philosophy back in the day when I was a tech and I was mounting the cameras and building the systems. We wouldn't upgrade it unless it stopped working. What the education piece, going back to the education piece for the integration channel, needs to understand is that without these firmware updates, these regular maintenance updates, you are leaving those devices open to be a weak point in a network for your customer. We have to, as an industry, take on responsibility and accountability. And exactly to your point, Elisa, the integrators need to start understanding that this is not a revenue stream just to fill your pockets. This is an obligation and responsibility. If you're going to call yourself a security professional, then you need to start understanding that it's beyond just installing a device and moving on.
And here's the paradox though, right? Because every integrator says, oh yeah, we want more ROI, we want more reoccurring fees, yet they won't do this, right? And sometimes you have to do a little bit of investing and a little bit more of that front-facing white glove service to prove what that worth actually is, what the value is you're providing, before you start seeing that reoccurring revenue come in.
Right.
And so they all say they want it, they won't do the work to get it. And then they sit there, and so when you say to them, well, here's a reoccurring or some sort of RMR model for this product, they say, oh no, our customers won't pay for that.
And really what it comes down to is compliance. And Min, you and I can talk about this for hours. It's about compliance and governance. And this is where we're going to see things are going to have to change. And those companies who get it are going to be successful. The ones that don't are going to be out of business.
So, but it's not those two also, it's liability. Once the term liability comes into the picture, where now you're held accountable because of a breach, guess what, guys? It's your fault. Like the Targets out there, the Bank of Americas, and all the other companies that's been hacked. It's because of your misguidance that you didn't do this work, that we're breached. You're now held liable and accountable. Guess what, guys? We're never working with you again, and your reputation goes down the drain. So forget about this recurring revenue you're going to get. You're going to go bankrupt because you're going to get sued.
Right.
That's where it's going to be very interesting to see how this industry evolves.
And the IT and what I'm seeing happening is the IT professionals, the IT integrators that are used to that kind of stuff, where they're like, yeah, we have to make sure that we keep our firmware up to date and all that. The security integrators are going to get squeezed out by the IT integrators, because I'm going to tell you right now, it's a lot easier to teach security to IT folks than it is to teach IT to security folks. And so, you know, we need to open up our pool of technicians and have to start looking at other industries, especially in IT, to pull in the talent that we need into security that is surrounding IT, and understanding governance and understanding how to set up networks properly and secure data in all of its, you know, forms. Camera is not just a camera. A camera is information, and you know, it's part of a big data network. Access control information has far more details about a person than a video stream does. Why aren't we making sure that we secure those databases and make sure that you know, people can't get in through an device that's an IP, like a reader or something like that?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how people are, you know, going to be evolving with this. My hopes are high. I mean, like with you being on board now in physical security, kind of endorsing cybersecurity on this. We have Andrew and all the other folks that we've been talking about that's like been keen on talking about this whole convergence business. It'll be interesting to see how it's accepted amongst the older, you know, I don't want to say old timers because you guys just bashed me on that one. Damn it. But, you know, the companies that have been so straight-laced in terms of how security needs to be run. And I think it's going to be not an uphill battle, but it's going to be an acceptance that the world is changing, you know, with the pandemics and all the other nice news about compromises, vulnerabilities, and pedophiles that's been out there targeting everybody. Sorry to slip that in,
Yeah.
but recently
no, right.
there was a, I think New Jersey just cracked down a pedophile ring, which was very interesting, of the targets. And there's a very interesting story I'll share later. And on top of that, the increase in the number of hacks that's going on with all these devices that's out there on the network now, I think there's been an uptick of 300% ever since COVID hit and we've been quarantined.
Wow.
So if you were to think about that and put that things in perspective, and now that we're—
Because the perimeter is no longer just the facility, right?
Not anymore.
Perimeter doesn't exist anymore. And you know, that's a really good point. I think, you know, I read an article the other day. There's like 15 or 20 global companies that are not requiring their employees to come back to work anymore. They don't have to, well, not to go back to work. They don't have to go back to the physical location, right? They can do work from home for good. And so what happens to our industry when they don't need those buildings anymore? So they don't need access control in the buildings. They don't need cameras on the buildings. There, you know, there are banks that are saying, hey, we're going to keep these branches open for drive-through only, but we're not going to do foot traffic anymore. So we're not going to upgrade the security needs for those branches internally because we just need the external.
Yeah.
We have to start evolving as an industry to say, okay, how do we pivot? And I don't know what the answer is, but there's not going to be as many devices needed, right? There's just, so we're going to be focusing on transportation, distribution, logistics, because that's all still going to be required. But that corporate security is not going to be needed as much anymore because a lot of people aren't returning to the office.
Yes and no, because the way I see it is you're right 100% on that, but I see an uptick in technology devices and also OT devices, not just necessarily physical security, but also the other building services that will be there. And I feel like there's going to be more of an integration of all these building services, plus physical security, AV, IT. I think there's going to be a lot more integration of these systems, more than we realize, that's going to be coming down the months, down the pipeline.
People are going to want a device that's going to be able to perform multiple functions.
Right, because
a device that's going to give me security, but it's also going to give me information on behavioral patterns or something like that.
Or even with this whole thermal, cameras that you guys are involved with, you know, people are going to want to see like heat monitoring. You know, what's the percentage of folks that are coming in with a higher temperature versus a lower temperature, and maybe getting a gauge on that, you know, providing matrices to the building owners and developers and saying, you know, we're doing this right. Can we actually get more tenants in or allow businesses to come in more? So as we start doing this more, like, how are you going to utilize this data? So I feel like I think there's going to be an uptick in the number of IP enabled devices, not just physical security, but all the other IP enabled devices. But I feel like there's going to be a lot more integration that's going to be happening.
With analytics specific.
Yeah.
I agree. So
it'll be very interesting. Anyway, that being said, we talked a lot about cybersecurity.
Yeah, you know me, I like to nerd it up a little.
Well, let's make things a little interesting here, Tony.
Oh God.
Why don't we tell the users one little tidbit about yourself that is not cybersecurity related, that you feel they should know about you personally, that really helped you develop yourself? Come on, Elisa, you knew I was going to go there.
Listen, I always leave these questions for you. I know you'll come up with the juicier ones.
Oh, come on. Oh, I haven't gotten that juicy yet, but we will get there.
Well, honestly, something I'm really proud of and I'm excited about is over this pandemic work from home thing, the first couple of months, I gained my COVID 10, right? Because I was just like eating everything in sight. Not that I don't know how to work from home, because that's what I do. But what I started to do is integrate meditation into my life. And so now I do daily meditation every morning after my workout. So
Are you a TMer?
What's that?
Are you a TMer?
What's a TM? Oh, transcendental? No, not yet. I haven't gone that far.
I did it several years back and it was awesome. I still do it. Yeah.
All right, cool. So I'll have to try to get into that. But meditation really has changed my life. And I think that, not to get all deep and whatever, I know you were probably looking for something a little more juicy.
Oh, we'll get there. I'm not worried about that. That's a good tidbit. That's a good starting point.
Yeah, but it's something that I love to do. And it just really has changed my whole mindset around what's important.
So since you like to nerd it up and you are into meditation, go to the David Lynch Foundation. And I'm not getting paid to say this by any means, but the science around TM is astounding.
Wait, so what's TM?
Transcendental meditation. It's just a method of meditating where they've actually taken, and if you've heard like Jerry Seinfeld or Howard Stern, they're all TMers. It's so simple. There's really nothing incredibly mystical about it. It's, but it's a type of practice that it is proven to have incredible, just physiological changes of the body from a cognitive standpoint, literally everything A to Z. It's incredible. You have to look at the science behind it. For me, I 100% am a believer. When I actually have a steady practice of it, which right now is nearly impossible with, a 2.5-year-old and 3.5-year-old.
Training and
yeah. But when I have that steady practice, mental clarity, memory, everything under the sun is just completely sharpened and improved physically, stress levels, cortisol levels, all that stuff. You notice a difference. It's incredible. So I am a big believer in it. And when my children hopefully turn 5, maybe I'll get back into it.
They turn 5, my dear.
No, well, I'm saying when they actually turn 5, hopefully I'll get into it.
Okay.
Again.
They hopefully turn 5. Like, what?
She's like, if they make it that far.
They're going to skip 5. Go right. Actually, I think my daughter already skipped 5. I think she's more like 45. But no, it's I'm hoping to get back into it. I have little pockets of the day where I can just close my eyes and, try and take it down a notch because there's so much going on. There's so much activity. It's funny when people say, oh, I don't know what to do with myself because now I work from home and it's so different and I can't leave my house. I'm like, really? Because I just had a huge uptick in activity with like kids and this and that. Now I have more people in my house because we're locked down than less. So it's insane. But once I can sort of get back into that rhythm, I'm going to do it. I'm going to jump right back in. I can't wait.
And then I'll be like trying to poke you. I'm like, Elisa, I have no idea what
she's like, leave me alone. I'm meditating.
See, Min, when she needs to clear her head, she goes out for a run. Me, I shut the light, just close my eyes for like 10 minutes. That's about it.
No, I need my run. That's basically it. And I feel it every morning. If I don't run in the morning when I have my meetings and there are people who are pissing me off, there are days I'm just like, I need to go out. Before I kill these people, let me just go run it off.
Good thing it's virtual.
But that's the whole point of virtual, because it makes it more stressful that you want to.
Yeah, that's true.
My husband, I actually literally had broken, back in the old college days, I actually had broken 2 computers because I was so frustrated with the programming. And when you're programming, you're debugging. So I literally slammed my hand on a computer and I cracked it. And my husband's like, you cannot program anymore because I was just so frustrated. Just saying. This is why I started running.
Did you do anger management after that?
I tried. It was just easier finding puncher bags. Oh my God. All right. So with the meditation part, what riles you up? Things not to do to you. Other than the bobblehead.
Other than bobblehead, I think that People's integrity, it really it pisses me off, you know, when people put out this persona that's not real. Authenticity is something that, and you and I had the conversation yesterday, authenticity is really important to me, and it's something that I have just recognized that we live once. Be your authentic self. Maybe not everybody's going to like you and be your best friend, but at least you know you're living your truth. And I think when I see people who are out there, you know, putting on this persona and there's really no substance to back it up, that frustrates the crap out of me. You know, where it's just,
I second that, you know, and it's funny because we talk about a lot of people, well, how do I say this delicately? There's been some conversation lately around, and I want to keep this conversation clean, but there's been a lot of conversation around stalking and bullying, right? And in the industry, a lot of us have experienced it. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, everyone makes mistakes. I certainly have made a lot of mistakes, but to go after somebody for what might be a perceived mistake, or I don't know, maybe just, you know, an opinion on them, like, what's the point of it?
Thank you.
What is the point of it? You know, and Min can speak to this firsthand. We've had a little bit of an incident more recently where, you know, she's been targeted. But why? If you're going to offer some sort of constructive criticism, great. If you're going to help somebody improve or give them a suggestion on maybe you could do things this way, maybe that would help you out, great. I am all for constructive criticism.
Mm-hmm.
So when you talk about being authentic, I feel like there is nothing less authentic than that, right? If you want to just sit there and point the finger at somebody else and say, you know, you suck,
there's no substance there.
But that's really rooted in insecurity, right? People who have a tendency to point out other people's flaws, whether it's privately or in public, that's really more about that person's insecurities. And it's hard for us as the recipients of those kinds of criticisms to palate that, because you're being victimized, whether it's, you know, on a public forum or privately. But I do believe that people who have to tear you down for whatever reason, it's really about their insecurities, and it's not about you as the person they're targeting. That being said, I also think that, you know, people need to put their foot down. We're all adults. This work from home thing, sitting behind a computer screen, having balls because you're on a keyboard.
Or trolling, as I like to call it.
So,
it
but
shouldn't be accepted.
I'll say one thing on that, because that's an interesting point. I've had this conversation with 2 or 3 other people. That's where I'll disagree. You know, Min, when she was dealing with this, and again, we won't name any names, but when she was dealing with this, she handled it very differently. And I commend her for how she dealt with the attack on her. It was very subdued. It was very matter of fact, like, you know, if you don't like me, that's okay. And you know, there's a lot of people out there who say, you know, you take a bully, you punch them in the nose, and then they leave. And, you know, that's one opinion. I kind of agree with how Min has handled things in the past. And I think, you know, should I ever encounter anything like that again, you know, there have been cases where I've had something like that and I had to handle it, and either I just walked away and didn't necessarily stand up for myself, or had to stand up for myself in a much more constructive, effective way. And that worked better for me. But when you engage in some sort of argument with someone else, especially publicly, I almost feel like it just gives it a little bit more validity, you know? And we joked around when Min was going through her little episode, and we joked around about, oh, we should say this or we should say that. Right. But she was right. She was 100% right. Don't even give it any value. To sort of take a step back, you know, you're creating a stark contrast, right? You have some people who want to outwardly say whatever, and, you know, everyone can sort of judge those comments independently, or you have somebody who just sticks to, Antoinette, your words, their authentic self, and show this is who I am. This is how I handle these situations, and let everyone else sort of make up their own mind. And that's what
I
I'm
hear
going
what you're saying about the engaging part. I think when I say, when I said the industry needs to stand up to the fact that we have to stop tearing each other down, I just mean that from whatever content that we're delivering, whatever we're putting out there, we need to drown out that negative crap with more positive stuff.
Agreed,
Right?
agreed, agreed.
And that's where my focus is. I am so grateful for all the people that I have in my life that have supported me and helped me and given me that constructive criticism and said, hey, look, this is, you know, maybe the way that you should do stuff. So what I try to do is just put that out there and drown out all the other negative stuff.
So
I think that those people eventually will just fall off. But we have to, as an industry, agree that we're not going to, and I use the word subscribe, not necessarily like monetarily subscribe, but we can't subscribe to the drama. And I think that's really what it comes down to. We have to put our best foot forward.
So I'm going to add to that. So when I was doing some coaching with Jeff Snyder, one of the things we talked about was emotional intelligence, how to put yourself into a situation and actually react positively instead of going to the basement. And I'm quoting him exactly. You got a positive and you got a negative and you get the basement. The basement is where you don't want to be, right? And when you post stuff on the internet, it never goes away. I don't care if you delete it, it will never go away. It is always going to be there 100%. So typically I don't post stuff that often unless it's something that I know is factually based, specifically for that reason. It's due diligence. And I think Ginger and when we had the last conference, it's called doing your due diligence and fact checking. Some of it may be opinionated because, you know, my personal beliefs, which is fine. You know, it's what I'm saying. But the thing is, you got to do it with emotional intelligence. Whatever you post on it, whatever you say, even if you want to argue and validate what you're saying, facts. And it's just, you got to state it with emotional intelligence. So that way people will always misconstrue what your statements are going to be regardless, because it's just human nature. But at the end of the day, you know, if you state it in a way where you're not taking sides and you're not attacking anyone and it's still constructive, there's a lot of emotional intelligence goes behind that thing. And a lot of people lack that. And that's what I see. If people start thinking about, you know, what they're saying and the impact of the words, you know, you remember the phrase, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Yes and no. Words will never hurt you physically, but it will hurt you mentally. And for the younger generation who's now coming on board, and this is the thing, Elisa, you, and we all talked about, you know, we've been around the block many, many times. So we know how to manage a situation. But for people who are growing up and just stepping now into the foot of the security world or any other worlds, and they're getting victimized in such a way, they're not going to know how to manage this. So really, it's like, you got to start engaging in what you're saying in a very, I'm not going to say articulate manner, but in a very emotional, intelligent way. Just start saying, hey guys, not everybody's going to like you. Guess what? Deal with it. You have to learn how to manage that. And that's exactly these type of situations that we're dealing with. You don't have to like me. I don't care if you don't like me. You know what? Work is work. Friendship is friendship. I like hanging out with you guys. You guys are great. So I can be my real self. And, you know, you see what you get. You know, I'm not hiding from this.
Well, and that's really well said. And I think providing that example, which you already did, Min, and I think we're all sort of providing our own examples, our own take on this example by supporting each other and posting something positive about people that you feel very strongly for that. And you're creating a brand. You are creating your own brand. Am I the type of person that tears down or uplifts?
Exactly.
And, you know, at the end of the day, when you're evaluating the conduct of someone or the content of someone's character, you know, it's the words that they choose. And again, I am not completely exempt here. I've definitely stuck my foot in my own mouth, and I've definitely said some stuff that I probably wouldn't say again. But we're all at fault. We all make a mistake, but are you willing to own that mistake?
And then how you grow from it, right?
How you grow from it. Exactly.
And I think that there is a really amazing opportunity here, especially as things are shifting. And I don't just mean like pandemic shifting. I mean, I feel that there is an existential shift in people right now.
Oh yeah.
Totally
You've got
agree.
an
Totally
entire
agree.
world of people that got thrust into the same exact situation, and everybody's looking at things a little bit differently.
Agreed.
Right? When I get to go out to lunch with my colleagues, I used to be so tied to the technology, and now it's tied to the people. And so even though we're separated, I feel like the shift has been on what's important, right? What we have these distractions all taken away, what's important. And really at the end of the day, it's the relationships.
Yeah. The collective consciousness
Yeah.
is becoming a little bit more tangible
That
every
literally just
single
gave me
day.
goosebumps. It gave me
Yeah.
goosebumps because it's the
Exactly.
truth.
It is the
Everybody I
truth.
talk to says the same thing. It's men, women, you know, older people, younger people. Everyone I speak to says the same thing. It's like
It's becoming just a
shift.
little more tangible every single day. It's amazing. On that note, we should probably say goodbye to our audience. We're running out of time. I love this conversation, and I hope you come back and speak to us again.
Thank you.
It's always fun. Maybe the next one will have better, juicier questions for you.
Oh, I do.
Yeah, I deflect really well. You see how I do that?
Like, Laura, so what are you wearing today? Would you what are you wearing? Sorry.
One last word of advice, and I say this with all my heart. Wear your best perfume, even if you're not going out of the house. That is something I do every day. I do it even though I'm working from home and I'm not going anywhere, because that's
I like that.
I just got a sample. I'm going to try this out now.
I'm going to go put them on right now.
Yeah.
Ooh,
It makes you feel better. Every morning I put my perfume on. I never leave the house, but it just makes you feel better. So that's my advice for the day.
Fun.
I'll sniff it on myself.
All right.
Exactly.
Okay.
Thank you
All
so
right.
much for having me.
Thanks, Tony, for being here. All right. Take care. Let's talk soon.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
See ya.